This is the lecture for Chapter 2, Using Research to Understand Children. Our objectives are here. Please make note that the first one, the ELA, is a separate lecture file. So you're going to want to check that out before you complete your ELA assignment. Today we're going to cover number 2 and number 3, understanding principles of research, and then knowing how to conduct research in schools. Right, the big picture. I want to bring it back to education and to developmental psych. Okay, so really, why is it that we're spending a whole week talking about research? So we're going to do a little true or false test here, okay? And I want you to put down on your page whether or not it's true or false. And you don't have to share this with your neighbors. I mean, if you want to talk about it, you know, in class discussion, that's great. But don't feel pressured to. I really want you to think about, you know, whether or not these statements are true or they're false. Okay? So here's the first one. Most children 5 years of age and older are natural learners. They know the best way to learn something without having to be taught how to learn it. Is that true or is that false? Go ahead and put an answer down. Does anybody want to weigh in here? True? False? More falses than trues? Definitely false. Okay. So most children don't know exactly the best way to go about learning something. It's not that people don't have inherent tendencies to learn, but there are strategies that we can use to increase understanding, comprehension, and memory. Okay. Here's another one. When we compare boys and girls, we find that both groups are on average very similar in their mathematical and verbal abilities. Is that true or is that false? Where are my girls at? Yeah, this is actually true. Yeah, this is actually true. Ladies, I hoped you would kind of stick up for us here. A lot of times, and in some previous research early on, there was a tendency to favor boys in math skills, verbal abilities, spatial abilities, and overall what we're seeing in the research now is a level playing field. Okay. Now, when you get into middle school, some of this changes a little bit, but it's preference and motivation towards particular subjects that changes it. Okay. Here's another one. The best way to learn and remember a new fact is to repeat it over and over again. Does anybody do this? Repetition? Sometimes. Is it the best way to learn something?
I remember reading it, I don't know where it was, but that's false.
You are right. Abby, you are right. It is false. It is a good way to learn something, and it can work, okay? But it is not the best way. Does anybody know what the best way is?
Hearing it?
Huh? Hearing it? More than that. So it's a cognitive strategy. Leo?
Association?
Yeah, association, also called elaboration. Okay, so we'll call it elaboration, same concept. So you take something and you attach it to something you already know and that is familiar to you. And you build your cognitive structures that way. Okay, that's the best way to learn something. Number 4, although students initially have many misconceptions about the world, they quickly revise their thinking once their teacher presents information that contradicts what they believe. True or false? Do children change their mind? False.
And the third one, biology, you learn every kid in our class's name in 15 minutes because he based this on states that he's familiar with.
The association piece, yeah, definitely.
I thought that was ridiculous. There's like 45 kids in the class.
And Ray has actually been in my class where I've done that word association game with students' names. Yeah, I haven't done 45, 30 tops. Yeah. Okay, so do children change their mind when you present them with evidence? Not really. No. Even when it's compelling scientific evidence.
Where did you just say children?
Adults are even worse. Yeah, adults are even worse, okay? So you're going to get a bunch of students in your classroom that think the world works in a particular way. I like to call this the Disney effect, especially when it comes to history. Right? So you've got Pocahontas, and that's the story, and that's how it happens. Now you're going to come in and try to teach them some facts about this story of Pocahontas, and they're not going to have it. Okay? Now it's not that it's not worth teaching the facts, but just know that there are going to be some issues there. Okay? All right, a couple more. Students often misjudge how much they know about a topic. True? False? True? Yes, absolutely true. Students do often misjudge how much they know. After reading something, all of us, even adults, think that we've retained much more of that information than we actually have, and it becomes very apparent when you go to apply it, that you don't actually know the information. Okay? Young children are very optimistic about how much they know, and I love this about them. Remember, one of our big lessons from last week was that children are capable, right, and amazing, and this is one of those places where their optimism about how much they know and about learning is really interesting and cool. Okay, so you want to take that excitement that they have and run with it. It's an advantage for a teacher. Okay, taking notes during a lecture usually interferes with learning more than it helps. This is one I like to, again,
It depends on the person.
She thinks it depends on the purpose. True or false?
False.
False, yeah. Are you guys just trying to appease me now? The research does show that if you're taking notes while you're listening to a lecture, what you're doing is elaborating and expanding and interpreting, and that's going to help you understand the material. Now with that said, if you have a professor who's up here just throwing out slides and you're trying to get everything down and you can't pay attention, that's obviously not effective teaching. Okay, so you can't take effective notes, and then you won't have as much learning. When a teacher rewards one student for an appropriate behavior, the behavior of other students may also improve. True or false? Yeah, true, it may. Doesn't mean it always will, but this is vicarious learning, right? So I could reward Chance for doing awesome on his assignment. Shayna's gonna wanna do awesome too, right? All right, last one. Anxiety sometimes helps students learn and perform more successfully in the classroom. True or false?
True. As long as it's not too much.
As long as it's not too much, yeah. So this is actually true. There's a moderate amount of anxiety that will increase learning, but it has to be the appropriate amount. So it's like a bell curve, okay? And if you've got too much anxiety, you'll have no performance. Too little anxiety, nobody cares. Why am I going to study this? I don't have to learn it. There's no repercussions. Just enough, and you have optimal learning. Okay? We'll talk more about this when we talk about challenge, because challenge will produce a little bit of anxiety. So if your students aren't feeling anxious at all, that's not good. If they're feeling way too much anxiety, that's also not good. So what's the point of this true and false little questionnaire here? What's my point for this chapter? Please, somebody gather all together what the point was. Okay, so you need to know the research in order to teach children effectively. Yeah, definitely. This is all research on education and child development. And you can take these lessons from the research to apply it to your teaching, and that's how you're going to be an effective teacher. And I hope that some of them were a little bit surprising, because they were to me. And when I read some of these journal articles, I said, oh, I didn't expect that. You know, especially this one, anxiety. I might have initially gone, no, I don't want my students to be anxious. That sounds bad. But then when you read the research article and you see that it's a moderate amount and it's appropriate to be age, developmentally appropriate, then okay, sure, I get it. So the point of this is that all of these are facts that we've learned through research that we can then use to help us in our teaching or as students when we learn. Okay? So the goals that we have for this chapter, the reason why we take time to look at research methods. The first is to understand how psychological and educational research extends and enhances our decision-making skills as a teacher. If I know the research, I can decide on a particular way to teach something, or classroom management, or whatever it might be, motivation. Okay? I can make those informed choices based on the research. So we need to spend time covering research so that we can fully understand what it's telling us. Okay? The next one, understand the methods researchers use to find objective answers to questions about teaching and learning. And I'm going to kind of pile this on with being able to conduct that actual research in our classrooms. So the correlation causation is really right here. If I don't know that a correlation doesn't mean something causes it, then I might misinterpret that conclusion. And that's not doing my students any justice if I brought that method into the classroom. So I've got to understand the methods. Okay? And the last one, you want to be able to conduct the research in your class. What if you tried out this new teaching technique and you want to know if it works? Should I do this again next semester? Well, I'm not going to know unless I can figure out how to collect data from my students and then analyze that data and make a change. Okay? And it's even more basic than that. Every time you give an assessment, that's conducting research. So if I give a test to you guys, that's a little mini research study. Because I'm going to look at your scores, what questions you got right, what you got wrong, what the averages were. I might compare you to another section to see if there are any differences. Did this work well? Did this work well? So an assessment, like a test, can be used to determine what your students know as well as what you have done as a teacher and what you might have to change. Okay? And in that case, it's a little mini research study. So is research important for education?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm really trying to make the case here. So yeah, right? That's one of our big take-home messages from today. That research is going to be really important to understand and use for all of the topics we look at from here on out. Yeah, Heather.
I just wanted to say that if you ever do special education, that's like your whole job, is the research. You spend so much time trying to figure out if what you're doing is working or if you need to change to something else. It's like your whole life. There's
So
much
I
paper
love that
and
you're
research.
saying that, but I want it to be everybody's whole life.
Oh, I agree.
Wouldn't that be great if even
I can only say it for special ed. 'Cause I
Yeah.
know that, but
No, I like that, and it's inspiring to me because I would love it if every teacher thought that way. Wouldn't that be great? Yeah, we could really raise the bar. So, awesome. All right, so there's the justification. We need to talk just a little bit about some of the types of research and some of the issues. And this is review from the reading and probably some of your other classes. Okay, so I'm going to move through it a little bit quickly. If you do have a question, do not hesitate to ask. We have 3 types of research that exist. And the first one would be a descriptive method. Okay, the goal here is to describe. It's pretty easy, right? We do little word associations in here. I don't know if you remember from last week. Descriptive research, the goal is to describe. So you're describing the current situation. Maybe it's your classroom. So I want to describe my students. So if I gave you all a math assessment and I calculated the average and the standard deviation, I could use those 2 statistics to describe the math ability that's currently existing in my classroom. Okay? And that's great because then I can know if it's changed over time. So all I'm doing is describing here. You have naturalistic studies and systematic observations. You'll see some observation if you do the ELA that has Claudia in it. A naturalistic study is going into the participant's environment. So instead of bringing them into the lab to conduct the research, it's happening where the participant is. So the classroom is a place that we see naturalistic studies. Okay, so goal is to describe. The next one here is a correlation. And this is the extent to which 2 variables are related to one another. So when you hear correlation, the word association is relationship. correlation equals a relationship. So one variable is systematically related to another. So when we compute a correlation, just like the one you saw in the YouTube video, all of them fall on a number line that range from -1 to +1. This is our correlation coefficient. Okay, it ranges on this tiny little number line. The sign and the actual value tell you about the relationship between the two variables. So positive means that they're moving in the same direction. Positive is the same. So if you are anywhere over here, you have a positive correlation and your variables are moving together. It might be that they're both moving down. Or we can talk about them as they're both moving up. Okay. So ice cream and polio. Positive correlation. Ice cream sales increase, polio increases. Ice cream sales decrease, polio decreases. Okay, but all it is a relationship between those two variables. Now if you're on the negative side over here, you have an inverse relationship. As one increases, the other decreases. Anybody think of an example of a correlation that would be an inverse relationship? Yeah.
If you eat Cheerios, your cholesterol goes down.
Yeah. They claim that too, don't they? Yeah. The more you eat Cheerios, the lower your cholesterol is. It's a relationship between two variables. Does it mean that the Cheerios are causing the cholesterol to decrease?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. And if it's a correlation, then no. It doesn't mean that. We have not done an experiment that proves causation or indicates causation. Good example. Okay. All right, the other thing that we look at is the actual size of the number. The closer you are to the outside, the ones, the stronger the relationship is. So I like to think of it, this is weird, but as a dumbbell, straight. Right? So the further you are out here, like a big dumbbell that I'm bench pressing, the stronger the correlation is. Okay? The stronger the relationship is. Okay. So they did find a very strong relationship between polio and ice cream. It was way out here. If it was down here near 0, it wouldn't have come out as significant. They wouldn't have said that they were even related to one another. So correlation is what? What do we think of?
Relationship.
Relationship. Awesome. Thank you. All right, the last one down here is an experimental study. Okay? So with an experiment, we have an independent variable and a dependent variable. Remember this from like 5th grade? It's back again. IVs and DVs. The independent variable is the variable that you manipulate, that you change. The dependent variable is the variable that you measure. Cause and effect. So now we can say that one variable causes a change in another variable. We can't do that with correlation, but we can do it with an experiment. And we can do that because we exert control over our variables, and we systematically measure the outcome from them. Okay, so we manipulate, we exert control, and then we measure. So a very simple example, that's teaching. Okay. You guys are one of my sections. Maybe we're doing YouTube clips in this section. Okay, and I want to know if that has an effect on your learning or your memory for material that's covered in the YouTube. So you guys get YouTube, my other section doesn't. Forget them. We don't care about them. And then I compare your quiz scores. What's my independent variable? What did I manipulate? YouTube videos. One section got YouTube, one section didn't. And what is my dependent variable? Quiz scores. Yep. Okay. Both sections are getting YouTube, but last semester I did, one section had the lecture notes and one section had the active reading questions. So this is research that, you know, I do in the classroom. You guys get a vote though. I must like you though. All right, so IVs and DVs. Okay, this is where you can get a causal relationship. Some issues to keep in mind during not only data collection, but also when you're interpreting your results. So this is going to help you become a critical, thoughtful consumer of research. We talk a lot about reliability and validity. Okay. And this was some of what you talked about just a moment ago in our discussion about the YouTube clip. So reliability, is there consistency in results? So the word association, reliability equals consistency. So I like to think of a good old reliable friend. Right? That friend that'll pick you up at midnight when you need a ride. That friend that always picks up the phone every time you need them. Okay? Reliable, consistent, they are always there for you. We want our data to be consistent, to be reliable. So if I replicate my study, I should see the same results. And if I don't, then there was something else that caused the results that I got. So if it's a teaching techniques study, if I'm comparing YouTube to no YouTube, in one section, one semester does really well, and then the next section it flips, then I don't have any consistency here. Okay, I can't say that it wasn't some other factor in my classroom, some other variable that caused the change in the quiz scores. So I'd have to think again about using that teaching method. Right? Validity, does my measure actually measure what I intended to? So I like to think of truthfulness here. So validity is truthfulness. Am I measuring what I intend to measure? So I'm a math teacher, second graders, and I want to understand your math ability, taking a baseline measure. So I give you a test, and it's got 10 addition questions on it. Is this a valid measure? Is this good?
Why not? Abigail, why not?
Rebecca.
Rebecca, crap. Abigail? No. Jackie. Abby.
Yeah.
Sorry. Thought I had it. Okay, so Alyssa. No, Alyssa.
No, that's Jackie and Rebecca.
Rebecca. Who's Alyssa?
I don't think we have an Alyssa.
Flip over the page, Ray. The attendance page. Please flip over your attendance page. Please tell me there's an Alyssa on there.
No.
It wasn't in our other class? Your Thursday class?
It might be in the other class.
No.
You have one in Thursday?
No, there's not.
You can call me Alyssa. I don't have words.
I just scored it. Okay, Rebecca. Why is this not a valid measure?
Because you can be really bad at math or addition, but be really good at subtraction or division. So if you just have one type of math, it doesn't show that they can be good in other sections.
Yeah, I'm not actually assessing math ability. All I'm assessing is addition ability, right? All I'm getting at is addition skills, not all of these other things that would contribute to an overall math score. So I need to take that into consideration when I'm collecting data from my participants to make sure I'm measuring what I intended to. Especially if I'm going to measure something like learning. This global term I keep throwing out. Did you learn anything? Well, how are you measuring learning?
Couldn't that depend on, like, I guess the grade level that you're doing the test for too? Because I know that, like, you don't learn, multiplication until, second, third grade or things like that. And it's
Absolutely.
very, very basic. So if you're going with like kindergarten or first grade, they're probably just still doing.
Yep, but I would probably put counting on there. I would probably put shapes on there. Some other things that are also included. But you're right, and what is Chance talking about? It was what we ended with last class. Yep. Developmentally appropriate practice. Yeah. Making that exam or assessment work with the students that you're trying to assess. Okay. All right, so whenever I'm giving out an assessment, I'm going to be thinking about reliability and validity, and when I'm interpreting research that I might consider adopting in my classroom, I'm going to think about those two things as well. Okay. The last one here is a cultural bias that might exist. And I'm happy to say that a lot of our standardized measures are decreasing in their cultural biases. We're getting better at this than we used to. You should, actually I'll bring in one of the older IQ tests to share with you from the 60s, and it's really interesting to see the cultural bias that exists in the questions that are asked, how they're asked, just the assumption of what the norm is for people, and then those IQ scores were based off of those assessments. Okay, so we do want to be careful that we're not creating assessments or conducting research that would unfairly penalize people from particular groups. Okay. All right. So we'll use this not only again for our own assessment, but as we're interpreting research that's coming in.
Like the IQ test based off of like what was called like eugenics or something.
Yeah, that's the nature-nurture debate in IQ. Yeah. And I'm going to hold you off until we get to that chapter. It's a good, interesting subject. Okay. So we have 4 particular designs that are important for studying development specifically. And we talked about what development was last class. Remember the systematic, consistent change that's progressive over time. Okay. So to study that, we have 4 particular designs. I'm going to have... At this point in the lecture, we broke up into groups. Each group had one of the designs, and they were responsible for filling out the chart, the description, the advantages, and the disadvantages. You have this available to you, but you want to make notes from your book and other readings to make sure that you're understanding fully what these different designs are. I'm going to spend just a minute here covering them again with the class. Questions as well. Okay, so you have this chart available to you. To quickly summarize what we've talked about in our groups. Longitudinal, same participants, studied at different times. So you guys are in first grade because you're in the first row. Okay, so that this will happen all semester. Yeah. So you're in first grade. I'm going to come in and give them that awesome math ability score. I want to test their math. And then I'm going to come back and they're going to be in second grade. They graduated back here. And I'm going to do that again. I'm going to look at math. And then I'm going to come back and they're in third grade in math, and fourth grade and it's math. But it's just these 3 people. Okay? So I get to see change, individual change over time. Okay, that's an advantage. But I will definitely spend a lot of money. It's going to take me 4 years. It's going to be a lot of resources. And a lot of us don't have that. Right, available to us. Practice effects might come into play. So you take the test 1 year, you take it again the second year, you take it again the third year. You're getting better just because you've taken this test before. All right. So that might come into play. It depends on how I design my study to measure math ability. And then attrition. Does anyone know what attrition is? It's a dropout rate. Right? So people not dropping out of school, dropping out of your study. Chance moved, your parents got divorced, so you're in a different school. Stephanie's still here. Great, I've got 1 out of my 3 participants. Cross-sectional. People of different ages studied at different times. So I said you're in first grade, you guys are in second grade, you guys are in third, and you're in fourth. That's how it's just going to be for the rest of the semester. So I study you all. Give everybody a math ability test, and then everybody goes up a year. So now my second graders are in third, and my third are in fourth, and I give you another test. Am I sequential or cross-sectional?
Cross-sectional.
Oh, okay. Scratch that. Jump ahead. First, second, third, and fourth, I give you all a math assessment, and then I'm done. Whew. Much easier. One time, I only measure you one time. Okay? So I got a little excited about the sequential. The cross-sectional is one time. So I'm losing individual information because I don't see the way that you change because I'm only measuring you once. But I'm comparing this group's average to that group's average to the next group's average. I get rid of those practice effects. You're only taking it once. I don't have to worry about anybody dropping out. I lose individual differences, and I do have something called cohort effects. A cohort is what makes up a group of people, so particular characteristics that make you different as a group from another group. So if you were to talk about, it's obvious with 7th and 8th graders, the 7th graders are very different than the 8th graders in what they like, what they talk about, how they behave. Okay, those are cohort differences. There's also cohort differences on a smaller level. Tuesday class is different than the Thursday class. You're just a different bunch. You have different experiences, you talk about different things. Okay, so now sequential, right? And I'm not going to go through the whole thing again because I think you understand. All of you take the test and then you get older and you take the test again and then you get older and then you take the test again. I'm just taking these two and smushing them together. Super complex, a lot of time, a lot of money, but this will give you the most rich data. Okay, because you can see individual change and you can see group differences. So this is really special. I was so happy about it.
Is that what you
You can do that, yes, sure. With your standardized testing, yeah. I don't know how much they track children at the individual level and report that back. They do?
Yeah.
All right, well there you go. There's your answer. Yeah, that would be sequential. Okay. Now the last one that our friends in the back helped us with was microgenetics, so small development. So sometimes it's more important for me to see, did my students learn from the beginning of class to the end? Have I created a change? Okay, or is it still the same? Okay, so I could even look at one student or a couple students or my whole class. We do this a lot in teaching. Okay? If you measure these small developments, you're hoping to get at larger gains later on. Okay. All right, one of the things that we do for microgenetic studies is called action research. And it's probably one of the most used research techniques for education, and that's why I want to call our attention to this. And what we're talking about here is our third objective for today, and that's how to actually conduct research in schools. So you'll see this quite often if you enter the school system. Or you ought to see it, and I hope you see it and do it quite often. So systematic study of an issue or problem by the teacher or other practitioner, goal of finding out more productive outcomes for children. We call it active research because you're actually changing something. You're identifying an issue, going ahead and collecting data, and then making a change in your classroom or in your school. Okay. So the steps: identify the area of focus, collect data, analyze and interpret data, and then develop an action plan. This last piece is the application part. Okay? So you collect this data with your students. Now what are you going to do with it? Hopefully improve your teaching or change the way you're assigning something or whatever it might be. But you create that action plan. I would encourage you as teachers to share your research with other people, and that would be part of your action plan. So you say to your colleagues down the hall, hey, this is what's working for me. Or this is what's working with this particular student. What can we do to help this student learn? So all we're doing here is applying the research to the classroom. All right. So our take-home messages, our summary slide, what we did, what we didn't do, to recap. Research is important. That's a big take-home message. It's important for us as teachers and as learners, we want to base all of our practices on what's been studied and what the results have shown. Understanding the types of research and issues. What are our 3 types of research? Yep, descriptive, correlation, and experiment. And issues?
Liability, validity,
Biases. Yep. Okay. Knowing how to conduct research in schools, so basically just applying this to the classroom. Things that we did not have a chance to cover, analyzing developmental research. We did a little bit of that, okay, but your textbook gives you some more important and succinct bullet points. And then being able to properly consume research. And again, we touched upon that a little bit, but there's a section in your book that you should read. I just spent some time covering the summary with the class. Here's the summary slide again for you, just to wrap up objectives and to make sure you understand that there are things that we didn't cover in lecture that you are still responsible for in your text.